Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. Indian Army has martyred a 13-year-old girl in unprovoked fighting in Bedori sector along the line of control. Pakistan military's media wing says the deceased girl's mother and a 12-year-old boy were also injured in the Indian fighting. The ISPR says Pakistan Army responded effectively to Indian aggression against civilians in Hajipir and Bedori sectors. India's increasing ceasefire violations across the LOC have heightened tensions between the two countries. Yesterday, Indian forces' indiscriminate fighting critically injured 3 Pakistani civilians. Islamabad has summoned Indian charge d'affaires multiple times to warn India against flaring up tensions in the region. Pakistan has strongly condemned the extrajudicial killings of civilians by the Indian troops in occupied Kashmir. In a statement, the Foreign Office said the Indian forces have martyred over 110 Kashmiris in fake encounters during the past 5 months. It said the BJP leadership is directly responsible for these politically motivated killings of Kashmiris. The Foreign Office said the international community must take immediate notice of Indian atrocities in the valley. This comes as Indian forces martyred another 8 Kashmiris in the last 2 days alone. The death toll from COVID-19 in Pakistan has topped 3,500 after 119 more died overnight. The Health Ministry says nearly 5,000 tested positive in the last 24 hours, raising the tally to over 176,000. The ministry said nearly 68,000 patients have recovered so far, while there are still over 105,000 active cases. The southern province of Sindh leads in the number of infections with over 67,000 cases, while Punjab is second with nearly 66,000 cases. Meanwhile, international flight operations to and from all the airports of Pakistan have resumed except Gwadar and Turbat airports. India has recorded its highest single-day surge in COVID-19 cases as 15,400 tested positive for the virus. India has now become the 4th worst-hit country with over 400,000 infections. The Health Ministry said 306 people died overnight, taking the death toll to over 13,000. Officials said there are more than 169,000 active COVID-19 cases across the country. They said the number of recoveries stands at 2.2 million. The ministry said major cities like Delhi, Mumbai and Chennai are badly affected. In Brazil, the COVID-19 death toll nears 50,000 as more than 1,000 died overnight. In the US, the death count has surged to nearly 118,000 with over 2.2 million infections. Globally, the COVID-19 death count has crossed 464,000 with over 8.7 million infections. More in this report.
As the world struggles to contain COVID-19 spreading, Latin America continues to remain the flashpoint of the virus. The region has passed 2 million cases, with Brazil becoming the 2nd worst-hit country by COVID-19. As cases pile up in Chile, the government has revised its death toll to over 7,000 from the previously known 4,295.
In relation to those who died due to COVID-19 without laboratory confirmation, that is, deaths in which COVID-19 is a possible or a probable cause, the number rises by 3,069.
Many European countries are easing lockdown restrictions, while Germany struggles to contain the recent outbreak at a slaughterhouse. Over in China, authorities reported 25 new domestically transmitted cases of the virus, but experts believe Beijing's effective response is a contribution to the global course of human rights.
China, you had a huge mobilization of the whole of society to save people's lives. China paid a very severe economic price for this. So this is not happening in the United States. The American people are just being allowed to die. That's why you've had such enormous demonstrations and protests in the United States. 20 million people in America have also lost their jobs.
In the African continent, the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases has crossed 286,000 as death toll climbs to nearly 7,700.
Pakistan has reopened 2 key trade routes with Afghanistan on the request of Kabul administration. In a statement, the Foreign Office said border terminals at Torkham and Chaman have been opened for the transit trade and exports to Afghanistan. It said the 3rd border terminal at Ghulam Khan will be opened on 22nd of June. The months-long closure of the border crossings led to huge losses for traders, especially Afghan fruit merchants. Pakistan and Afghanistan share 18 crossing points, but Torkham and Chaman are the most commonly used. Afghanistan's acting foreign minister Mohammad Hanif Atmar has met his Iranian counterpart Jawad Zarif in Tehran. The Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the issue of migrants and other matters of bilateral importance were on the agenda. It says the Afghan delegation includes officials from ministries, Presidential Palace and the National Security Council. The Afghan Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the reported mistreatment and drowning of Afghan migrants on the border were to be discussed. It said the ways of strengthening and developing cooperation between the two countries is also on the agenda. Yemeni southern separatists have taken control of military and police camps in Yemen's Socotra archipelago, a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Clashes erupted between the government and the Southern Transitional Council last week after both accused each other of violating the Riyadh Agreement. Fighting started in the strategic Socotra archipelago yesterday as the two sides battled for control of the island's capital. Condemning the separatist attacks, Socotra Governor Ramzi Mahroz said his forces will fight back. The Southern Transitional Council has also claimed arresting several military personnel, including an Air Force commander. Egypt has threatened direct military intervention if Libya's government of national accord forces attack Libyan strategic city of Sirte. In a televised address, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi said Egypt can intervene in Libya to protect its western border. Al-Sisi said Egyptian forces will act on the request of the only legitimate elected authority in Libya, which is the House of Representatives under LNA. Meanwhile, Saudi Arabia and the UAE have supported al-Sisi's statements, saying Egypt has the right to protect its borders and people. Libya's GNA has rejected the warning, calling it interference in the country's affairs. The GNA has recently made major gains in the war against LNA after acquiring Turkey's support. 7 people have been killed in 2 separate bomb attacks in southern and central Somalia. Soldiers and civilians were among the dead. In the first incident, police say 2 bombs went off in front of the house of a military official in Walwyn town. In the second incident, 3 militants in a car carried out a suicide bomb attack at a military checkpoint in Bakadawin town. A military spokesperson said the soldiers shot at the vehicle after the driver ignored orders to stop. 3 soldiers died and 2 others were wounded. No group has claimed the responsibility for the attacks yet. In the UK, 3 people have been killed and as many critically wounded after a stabbings rampage at a park in the southern town of Reading. Police said a 25-year-old man has been arrested at the scene on suspicion of murder. They said the incident is currently not being treated as terrorism. Police said there is no intelligence to suggest any further danger to public. However, people are urged to remain vigilant. They said incident was not connected to an earlier Black Lives Matter protest at the park. Lawmaker from Matroda said incident is deeply distressing to the whole town as it took place at a park often used by people for social gatherings.
A quiet park just off the town centre, which has been used for many years for people to go and sit in at the weekend. It's peaceful. People were sitting, observing social distancing, just chatting in groups when this incident happened. And it must have been absolutely shocking, and it is deeply distressing to the whole town and our wider community.
Earlier, hundreds of demonstrators gathered at anti-racism rallies across the UK cities, including London, Manchester, Edinburgh and Glasgow, despite a ban on large gatherings. Now moving on, during the Black Lives Matter protests in the US, 1 person has been killed and another wounded in a shooting incident in Seattle's Capitol Hill area. The police say they are investigating the incident.
Black Lives Matter protesters occupied the area after the custodial killing of George Floyd triggered a nationwide protest. The hospital said a 19-year-old male died shortly after arrival, while the other was in critical condition. In Minnesota too, the police said 1 person has been killed and 11 others injured in a shooting in Minneapolis. Meanwhile, North Carolina's governor has ordered the removal of a Confederate monument after demonstrators pulled down 2 statues. In Tulsa, Oklahoma, President Donald Trump criticized anti-racism protest as he addressed a smaller than expected re-election rally.
The unhinged left-wing mob is trying to vandalize our history, desecrate our monuments, our beautiful monuments, tear down our statues, and punish, cancel, and persecute anyone who does not conform to their demands for absolute and total control. We're not conforming. That's why we're here, actually.
Meanwhile, investigators in Atlanta have issued an arrest warrant for a female suspect over the Wendy's restaurant arson last week.
US President Donald Trump says he will announce new restrictions on visas within a couple of days to block the entry of certain foreign workers. In an interview, Trump said the new restrictions will protect Americans struggling with the job market crushed by the pandemic. The US president said there will be very few exclusions from the new restrictions. Major American tech companies have urged Trump to refrain from blocking the flow of foreign workers into the country, saying it would hurt the economy. Earlier in April, the president ordered a temporary block on some foreigners from permanent residence in the US. In Mexico, 215 bodies have been found in 9 mass graves in the state of Jalisco between the months of January and May. At a virtual press conference, Jalisco state prosecutor said the graves were located in the Guadalajara metropolitan area. The prosecutor said analysis of 5 graves is still pending due to a lack of staff unearthing, which could increase the body toll. The official said a large number of bodies have already been identified and sent to their families. Violent crimes have continued in one of the deadliest countries in the world, despite confinement due to the coronavirus pandemic. Official data suggests there have been over 287,000 murders in the country since 2006 military crackdown on organized crime. Serbians are heading to polls to elect a new parliament in Europe's first national elections since coronavirus lockdowns. Polling stations will be equipped with face masks and hand sanitizers for the use of the country's electorate of almost 6.6 million. But many are expected to skip voting, partly due to fears of infecting the virus. Opinion polls show Alexander Vucic's conservative Serbian People's Party set to get about 50% of the vote. His popularity is boosted by widespread public approval over the government's handling of the pandemic. The turnout could also be hit by boycott campaigns of opposition parties who say the vote will not be fair due to President Vucic's firm grip over the media. Chinese researchers have launched a second-phase human trial of a possible coronavirus vaccine on Saturday. The second trial is among 6 possible vaccines being tested by the Chinese scientists on humans. Institute of Medical Biology at Chinese Academy of Medical Sciences says the phase 2 trial will determine the shot's dose. It will continue to evaluate whether the potential vaccine can safely trigger immune responses in healthy people. The institute said it expects to use a plant dedicated to producing a coronavirus vaccine this year to prepare for China's future vaccine supplies. About a dozen vaccines are in different stages of human tests globally. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Most parts of the world have witnessed the annular solar eclipse that created a ring of fire around the sun, which was seen in several countries. The event occurs when the moon covers the center of the sun, making the outer edge of the sun around the moon appear as a fire ring. Today's eclipse is rare as it concurs with the annual summer solstice, the longest day when Earth's pole is tilted at its maximum towards the sun. Celestial experts had advised people not to view eclipsed sun with the naked eye, even for a very short duration of time. They say direct exposure could have caused permanent damage to the eyes, leading to blindness even when the moon covers most portion of the sun. Indonesia's Mount Merapi has spewed ash and hot gas in a 6-kilometer high column in a fresh eruption. Massive ash clouds blanketed several villages on the main island of Java as the rumbling noises heard kilometers away. Indonesia's Center for Volcanology and Geological Hazard Mitigation have not raised Merapi's alert status. Center says the status is already at the 3rd highest level for the country's most volatile volcano since it began erupting last August. Authorities said an eruption in March forced the Solo airport to close, and people were asked to keep out of a 3-kilometer exclusion zone around the mountain. Merapi is the most active of 500 Indonesian volcanoes, as its last major eruption in 2010 killed 353 people. The COVID-19 pandemic has not only upset humans but animals too. Life is harder than usual for the street dogs of La Paz amid COVID-19 quarantine. But a Bolivian man is making their days a little brighter and their bellies a little fuller. Details in this report.
Fernando Kushner and his assistant roam on the city streets every day looking for stray dogs in need of some additional food and a little extra love. Kushner's mission of street dogs' welfare began 5 years ago when he developed a program and campaign to promote feeding the dogs as well as adoption, sterilization and education. 3 restaurants supported Kushner's efforts by giving him daily food scraps for the dogs, but these donations dried up during quarantine.
I had food from 3 restaurants and gave them the dogs croquettes. Both meaning croquettes and scraps, not just restaurant scraps. And with the quarantine overnight, the volume of abandoned dogs increased by 10,000%. 1 bag of kibble wasn't enough. We had to carry 3, 4, 5, 6 large bags a day to be able to feed the street dogs.
Kushner and his team secured documentation to continue to work for the street dogs during the lockdowns. Although he has seen an increase in the number of abandoned animals since the pandemic began, Kushner says he has been heartened to see neighborhood residents leaving food and water for the dogs.
More or less, 2,000 dogs are helped daily in different neighborhoods, and more than 1,800,000 rations have been given during the quarantine. For me, it is somewhat alarming. I never thought I was going to do it, but it can be done. It is to reach your hand out a little and ask for help and listen to the one above who sends you more energy, nothing more.
According to government statistics, there are some 780,000 stray dogs in Bolivia today.
And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus News.